Hi, this is a podcast from English Airwaves. English Airwaves is an online English radio station based in Concepcion. As you know, the purpose of the English radio station is to build a community, share common meaning, and forge a common identity. Today, I am joined by Benjamin Blomfield from Australia. Benjamin is a journalist from Australia, and he's been in Chile for at least 8 years now. So let's welcome Benjamin. Hi, Benjamin. How are you today?
Hello, Claudio. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Okay, Benjamin. So can you please tell me a little bit about yourself and your family?
Sure. I grew up on the Gold Coast, which is a small beach town in the north of Australia. I have two sisters and a mother and a father. I studied eventually at Griffith University, studied journalism, and then I left my home around 21 to move to the north of Australia to start my first job in a newspaper called the Bundaberg Newsmail, as a sports journalist, actually.
Wow, that sounds pretty interesting. What was it like to grow up in Australia?
Well, growing up in Australia was pretty amazing. I mean, it was a fantastic childhood, and living close to the beach was a real treat. And I can't complain, to be honest. I really enjoyed growing up in Australia, and especially the Gold Coast.
Right. What did you do? Any beach-related sports like surfing and stuff like that?
I did. Yeah, I was a real sporty guy growing up, and I still like to consider myself a sporty guy. But when I was a kid, I really did a little bit of everything.
Right.
I obviously surfed for a couple of years. I played rugby.
Wow.
I played rugby league, which is another form of rugby in Australia. I played AFL, Australian Football Rules, which is another form of rugby, kind of similar in Australia. I played basketball. I skateboarded. I played tennis. Cricket. I love cricket.
It seems like you did everything.
I really did do a little bit of everything, to be honest.
Nice. Where did you go to school in Australia again?
My primary school was Ashmore State School.
Okay.
And my high school was Trinity Lutheran College.
Right. What was your were you like a good student? Were you a popular kid?
I think academically I was okay. I wasn't a brilliant student. I was more interested in sports, to be honest. That was my strength. And I always loved English as well. I always did well in English and sport.
Right.
Maths and biology, chemistry, I never did very well. I always passed those subjects, but I never got top marks.
I see what you mean. So I take it English was always your favorite subject.
It's strange because normally when somebody's a real sporty guy, a really good athlete, you don't really associate them with having a love for English.
Right.
But I always loved English and sport, which are very contradictory subjects. They don't really have anything in common, but there was something about English that I always enjoyed, and I always felt that I was a good writer. I always found writing very easy, and I was always very good at it.
Right. You're totally right. It's pretty ironic because, English is a pursuit that requires you to be sitting down or, concentrate on something in one spot. And sports is totally the opposite. It brings you outdoors and it invites you to do a lot of running and a lot of sweating and stuff like that. So it's completely the opposite.
It is, but somehow those were my passions, and they still are today.
That's cool. So I was wondering whether you were a popular kid at school. Like, did you have a lot of friends, or maybe only a few kids hung out with you?
I was definitely in the popular group. In Australia, it's not exactly like the States, United States, where you have this really strong groups, like the cool group, the not so cool group with the bullies and the cheerleaders. It's not like that extremely in Australia. It's a bit more, everyone's kind of just, hanging out with each other. Everyone's
I understand.
Friendly with each other. But I definitely was part of the cool group, and I had a lot of friends. Yeah. Yeah,
and I see why you were a cool kid. Being in sports and being good at all those things definitely calls other people's attention, and so it's easy to fit in like that.
Yeah, when you're good at sports, it kind of makes it easier to make friends and
exactly. And you're not even paying attention to the bullies.
Well, I mean, I don't think there were any bullies, to be honest. I mean, in high school, I think bullying kind of happened more in primary school. In high school,
Right.
didn't really have those typical bully guys.
That's
a good thing.
That's really cool. Now, besides, in the past, bullying was not as big of a problem as it is today.
Yeah, I don't know the extent of bullying in Australian schools today because obviously I'm no longer in school. But at least I remember when I was a kid it existed.
Right.
But nobody ever obviously killed themselves or nobody ever came to school with a weapon looking to hurt people. That never happened in Australia, and I still don't think it does.
Yeah, and it wasn't so much on the news before, was it?
No, I mean, you never saw any reports about bullying in schools on the news in the past. I think primarily because there was no way to actually record the bullying because there were no cell phones with cameras. So whenever bullying... Most reports you see today come about because somebody has a video of some footage of bullying.
So everything that happened before was just happening behind the scenes, right? Nobody knew about it.
I imagine it was happening, but it was just less accessible to the public eye because there were no cameras, no smartphones to actually record and put that into the public eye.
Right.
That's why probably it wasn't such a big issue.
Yeah. Anyway, bullying is pretty unfortunate, and it's too bad that kids have to go through that.
Well, nobody likes to be bullied, and I've never really been the subject of bullying, so I don't know, what it would feel like, to be honest. But I mean, making somebody else feel bad, and I mean, why? I mean, what's the point? I mean, we're all.
Yeah, those people must have some big issues, unresolved issues to be doing that.
I mean, I think when you're a kid, you're easily influenced, and I mean, I must admit, there were times where I probably was guilty of bullying some kids in primary school, and I'm not proud of that. But I mean, I was a kid, and I thought that was the cool thing to do. So you do what you think is cool.
Exactly, you fall into the trap.
Yeah, you follow the trend, and you.
Yeah.
So kids, unfortunately, kids are easily influenced, and they might do things that they think at the time is the right thing to do, but then when they're older they can reflect on that and realize it wasn't. That's
true. The great thing is, though, that in general people are very, very resilient, and they just usually get over things. They usually forget about these things.
I mean, they might forget, but it always shapes them and forms them in a certain way and into the person they are today. And unfortunately, people will relate their school experience with bullying or not bullying. And if they were bullied when they were a kid, then they can never look back on that experience in a positive way, because it really should be a positive thing. Because after school, I mean, life doesn't get easier; it gets harder, and so you should be really enjoying that period of school before you enter the real world.
Yeah, that's true. That's like your safe haven, the place where you don't have like huge responsibilities or financial obligations. It's a playground, basically.
Well, I mean, that's what it should be. But I've actually noticed in Chile that kids are pretty inundated with responsibility at a young age. I mean, they're all
tell me about it. Yeah,
really swamped and flooded with homework. I've had a lot of kids that are students, and young kids, not even teenagers. And I asked them what they did on the weekend, and they studied.
Tons of homework.
What are you going to do this weekend? I'm going to study. I'm like, when I was a kid in Australia, I never ever studied on the weekend, never.
Right. It's this whole, the full-time school program that's messing up everything. It was supposed to bring changes, add more extracurricular activities, but what it did was just bring more of the same. And
I think the problem is that people know that if they don't get a good score in the PSU test and they don't study a high-level profession, law, engineering, doctor, they're not going to make they're not going to make a decent salary.
Right.
So everyone pressures themselves into studying this.
Yeah, it is true to some extent that it's hard to get a good paying job without a good education. But I think you're right. Kids are under tremendous pressure nowadays to perform. And I have 2 kids myself, but that's something we can talk about some other day. What I wanted to ask you now is move on to your higher education experience. Did you go to college in Australia?
I did. I went to university. Uni, as a lot of people say in Australia. I went to uni at Griffith University, which is a university on the Gold Coast.
Right.
And I studied journalism there, which is a 3-year degree.
That's pretty cool.
Not like 5 years here. It's a 3-year degree, because I think that's all you really need, to be honest.
That's true. I completely agree with you. What was your experience like? I mean, your major was journalism. So what was your experience like? Did you hang out with a lot of people? Did you keep to yourself?
Well, it's not like the what you see in the movies where kids go and stay on campus and they have these dorm parties and,
right.
You know, it wasn't really like that. It's more like Chile, where you live in your house and you commute every day to uni, come back in the afternoon, and
right.
It's more like that. That was my experience until the last year, where I actually decided to live on campus, because
I guess that's like the Australian reality in higher education. I went to the United States for a very short period of time back in 2007. I went to St. Cloud, Minnesota, and the reality was pretty much like what you see in the movies. Like most kids, they leave their parents' house and they go live on campus. That was the reality I saw there. And, you know, thinking back now, I can tell you that the reality is exactly what you see in the movies. Kids getting really, really drunk on the first night on campus because it's like the first night away from their parents. And they don't know how to handle their liquor because they have no experience, you know. So it was kind of crazy like that.
Yeah, it is. I had a friend who studied at Duke University in Connecticut, and I went to visit him during a trip to the States a couple of years back, and it really was the same. It really was like you saw in the movies. It was exactly like that.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like ambulances would come around every 30 minutes to pick up kids and take them for detox.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, I'm sure.
So you studied journalism for 3 years, and what did you do next?
I then started looking for a job. While I was studying at university, I was working for an online sports website called Sportal, and they would send me to some professional sporting games, basketball games, and cricket games, and I would write reports of the matches and send them to the website. They would upload them, and I was getting paid for that, and that was great. I mean, I was loving that.
It sounds great. I mean, it's just like your dream job. You know, you went for journalism, and you were seeing all these games for free, I guess, and...
Yeah, and I was able to talk to the players at the press conference after the games, you know, and it was really cool.
Yeah.
And I was only like 20 or something at the time, so...
Sounds like pretty good times.
And then when I finished university, I obviously, because the job at the website was not full-time work, so I needed to find a full-time job, and I started applying for... I sent my resume my resume to all the newspapers in Queensland.
Right. How did that go?
I think I sent about, I don't know, to 40 or 50 different newspapers, and I got one response from one newspaper. It's really hard to get a job in journalism, to be honest. I mean, in a newspaper, it's so hard.
Right.
And I got an answer back from one.
Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think it's so difficult to get a job with a newspaper?
Because there's not many of them. I mean, just think about how many newspapers there are in each city. I mean, in Santiago, you have 2 good newspapers.
Right.
And then you have a couple of other very sensationalist kind of newspapers. And then if you go to Concepcion, I think you have, one newspaper?
Yeah, that's true. We got the South, or El Sur. And
then you go to, I don't know, other cities, and you might have one newspaper per city. So there's just not, it's not like a hospitals. Every city has a lot of hospitals. You know what I mean? That's essentially why it's hard to get a job, because there are no jobs. There's only a certain amount of newspapers. Yeah.
Do you think there were too many journalists as well? Was journalism a popular program back in the day when you studied?
I think people like the idea